السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم وإنه لقرآن كريم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The ayahs of discussion today will inshallah be from Surah Waqi'ah, which is Surah 56, and the ayahs will be 75, 76, and 77. And the translation for these ayahs is that, then I swear by the setting of the stars, and indeed it is an oath, if you could know, great, indeed it is a noble Quran. So the ayahs of discussion, like, the topic of the day is oaths in the Quran, specifically this oath, and how we're meant to ponder and reflect over this specific oath in Surah Al-Qa'ah. So in order to understand this, first you have to understand what does the concept of oath actually mean, especially when the Quran was revealed. Because when the time of the Quran was revealed, what did it mean to the Arabs? What did the oath mean to the Arabs? And the Quran, specifically in the Mecca time, had two different audiences. It had the Muslims and it had the non-Muslims. For the Muslims, the purpose of the oath was actually to get the attention of the Muslim. It was so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could get the attention of the Muslim. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ, the Muslims are meant to be saying, hang on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore by something, so therefore I must pay extra attention. But this was not the case for the disbeliever, the person who didn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who didn't believe in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who didn't believe in the Quran. It was not the same case. For them, it was for credibility. Because they didn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so how can they get that attention? It was for the credibility. So these are two different purposes of the oath for the Arabs. And specifically, this oath is quite beautiful. Because the thing is, when you think of an oath, especially this oath, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by the setting of the stars, or He's swearing by the placement of the stars. And when we think of this, we're meant to be thinking, hang on, what does placement of the stars have to do with anything? What does it have to do with anything? How can I connect this with the Quran? Well, especially when you swear by something, the swearing is a prelude for what you're going to say. So I'll give you an example. If you say, I swear by, and then you say something. For example, I swear by tomorrow. Even though we know in Islam it's not permissible to swear by anything but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever wants to swear an oath, let him swear by Allah or remain silent. So we know we can't swear by anything else other than Allah. But for purpose of understanding, you say I swear by tomorrow. If you say I swear by tomorrow, whatever the subject is meant to give me an understanding of what's going to happen. So if you say I swear by tomorrow, automatically an Arab in that time will think something is going to happen tomorrow. Something is going to take place. So something is going to take place tomorrow. But if you say I swear by the door, then that means someone is coming through that door. So the subject of the oath is meant to actually give you a prelude of what's going to take place. And likewise, this oath, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the stars. So first of all, in order to understand this oath, we have to understand what does the stars mean. Like in the time where the Quran was revealed for the Arabs, what did the stars mean? Well, the stars meant quite a few things. The first thing is that for the Arab, the stars actually meant it reminded them of a journey. In essence, it reminded them of a journey. It reminded them of a journey in darkness, because they would travel during darkness because it was so hot during the day. And when you're traveling during the darkness, in the dark, what is your guide? The stars. So the stars will also remind them of guide, because it was their guide. It was their navigation system. They didn't have the technology that we have today, but that was what guided them to their destination. And the last thing it reminded them is of light, because during the dark times, during the darkness, what gave light? The stars gave light, because they were a guide, and you were going through this journey. So this is what the Arabs will think of, these four things. You have to keep this in mind. But hang on, you might think, how does this relate to me? Like, how can I, implement this ayah? Like, how can I constantly reflect and ponder over the ayahs of Allah, ayahs of the Quran? Well, how can I implement this? It's quite simple. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I swear by the setting of the stars, but then he says that this oath is so great, if you only knew. And then he says, وَإِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ. So that means when I think of the stars, because that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore by, the subject, I'm automatically meant to think of the Quran. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ, after he swore by the stars. And he said, verily, that this is, that, he says that, indeed, it is a noble, honorable Quran. That is indeed an honorable Quran. So that means when I'm thinking of the stars, automatically in my mind, I'm meant to be thinking of the Quran. But hang on, you might ask yourself, how? How can I relate these two things? Well, let's tell ourselves again that the stars were reminded the Arabs of a journey, darkness, guide, and light. In essence, if you think about it, we're on a journey. This life is a journey. And you might ask yourself, how is a journey? Well, didn't the Prophet Muhammad says tell us, be in this world as if you were a stranger or a traveller. And a traveller and a stranger they're on a journey. A traveller is on a journey. He's not here to stay forever. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran so many times, you're going to return to us. You're going to return to us so many times, reminding us constantly that this life is not permanent and that we are going to die. And what was the second thing? The second thing was darkness. Well, in essence, we are living in darkness because the only guide that we have is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In essence, we live in darkness in this world because we don't actually know what we have to do unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what we have to do, and that's when the Quran comes in. And the third thing was a guide. The Quran is also a guide because the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It guides you through this journey of life. The Quran is meant to be a guide for you, a constant guide for you. You're meant to be constantly reading it every single day. That's why it's so important to recite it every single day. Why? Because the Quran will help you through tough times in life, through sadness, through grief, through stress, through happy times. The Quran will tell you because it's a guide. It's meant to guide you through this journey. Like the stars guided the Arabs through the journey and during the dark, the Quran is meant to guide me and you through this life. The Quran is meant to be my guide and your guide. How I shape my thoughts, how I understand life, how I act to my parents, how I act to my friends. The Quran is my guide and is your guide. And the last thing, what was it? It was light. The Quran is the light. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says even in Surah Al-Taqabun, فَآمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَالنُّورِ الَّذِي أَنزَلْنَا. Believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it also says believe in the nur that we sent down. What is the nur? The nur is the Quran. The nur is the Quran. In essence, the Quran is nur, is light. Why? Because it's the light that guides you through this dark journey. The Quran is the light. So this is how you're meant to connect these ayahs. When you think of the stars, you're meant to be thinking of the Quran. So next time you're looking out in the dark, you're looking in the sky, think of how the Quran is your guide. When you look in the stars next time, tell yourself, like those stars guided the Arabs, like those stars guide the people on ocean, like those stars is a navigation system for people traveling, the Quran will guide me through this life. The Quran will guide me through this journey of life. It will be a guide for me. That's what you have to constantly tell yourself. And not just tell yourself, but act upon it. Because how do you know what to do if you don't recite the Quran daily? How do you know what to do if you don't ponder over the Quran? That's why it's so important, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave us two ayahs, two signs. There's the ayahs of the Quran, and then there's the ayahs of creation. And by ayahs of creation, I mean like the stars. Like the stars, the trees that we see, the flowers that we see, the sun is a create. These are all ayahs. We ourselves, if you look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us even in the Quran, look at your own self. If you ponder over the biology of the human body and the beauty, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, is an ayah. It's an ayah, and it's enough for you to believe as well. Because they constantly remind you of one another. If you look at the Quran tells you, look around you. And if you look around you, it is meant to actually remind you of the Quran. Because when you look at the stars, you're meant to remind yourself, oh, the Quran is the guide. When you look at the trees, you're meant to remind how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life to the death. It's a constant cycle. And when you read the Quran tells you how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life and death. And then you look at the creation and you see it for yourself. You see it for yourself because you see how the seasons change. You see a tree and you see during the winter it has no leaves. And you see how during the winter time, after when the summertime comes, it's got life again. Likewise, it's a constant cycle. So that's why we can never, ever, ever, ever not remember the Quran, not remind us, being constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because sometimes we tell ourselves, how can I constantly make dhikr? How can I constantly remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Well, if you ponder over the creation of Allah and you ponder over the ayahs of Allah, you're in a constant state of dhikr. You're constantly reminding yourself of the Quran. And that's how you become the people of the Quran. You have to make the Quran the central part of your life. It's how it shapes your life. SubhanAllah, it's such a beautiful oath, and that's why it's so important for you to understand how the Quran is your guide. That's why you have to constantly make yourself a timetable, how you're going to recite the Quran, how you're going to study the Quran, what efforts you're going to make to study the Quran, what you can do. These are constantly questions you should be asking yourself. And by this we finish. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.